100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez is an interesting novel. It begins as a memory within a memory. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aurelio Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. We have two ideas here separated from each other. There is, of course, the firing squad, and then there's the afternoon where he went to discover ice. There's a juxtaposition, an obvious one that we've seen in fiction a lot of the time, something horrific with something innocent. And that seems to be a lot of what happens in this novel. It is a work of magical realism, which is the idea that which is whimsical, magical, is presented with the same sort of weight as something which is not. Reality. Left and right, we see things sort of put up against each other in this juxtaposition. We see acts of violence next to flying carpets. We see the world put together in an odd place of creation. 100 Years of Solitude lives in nostalgia. And in a lot of ways, this work didn't feel that fictional to me. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Honduras. And a lot of what 100 Years of Solitude has are stories that I recognize. I was born in Honduras, Central America. And a lot of these stories feel very close to home. They're memories embedded within memories. Things I've never lived, but moments which I recognize. In that way, it's hard to separate the difference between the novel reality and the nostalgia I built myself. There's tragedy in 100 Years of Solitude in numbers, and there's tragedy in my life, and there's tragedy in the history of Central America, Latin America. It is both a commentary on those things, my life, and everything else in the world all at once. And it does it all, I would say, flawlessly. A thing about nostalgia is that I left Honduras when I was 6 and I came to America. There have been years where I've tried to reconcile my identity as an American as opposed to somebody from Honduras, as an immigrant. I have found it something hard to answer for. No matter where I've gone, people have an opinion about who you are, what you are. I've experienced what I would say is a lot of racism in my time. People who didn't like that I was proud of being Latin American. They degraded me. In high school, I got called a strawberry farmer. And it was a joke. I was supposed to laugh. I was supposed to laugh at my own degradation. And there's something in that in 100 Years of Solitude. We have the town of Macondo, which is the primary concern of the novel. This wonderful town that exists before time itself, seemingly, that doesn't even have a name, a place that is founded on tragedy, and we go from the first moments that exist seemingly on to the last. There's a history here which you can't leave behind, and there's a pride that slowly degrades. The family builds and builds and is a monument unto itself. It is a relic, an obelisk, something that the world knows of, at least in the town. Sort of indestructible till its very end. 100 Years of Solitude touches on destruction, desolation. It touches on the destruction of Latin America. The wars that have been fought, the death squads that have been funded, the regimes toppled for what? In it, the banana company, a real entity, comes and seemingly destroys the country for its own good. When we talk about magical realism, I mentioned that it puts up two ideas next to each other all at once. An idea of reality, an idea of the magical and whimsical. There are flying carpets. There is a way to predict the future. And then there are those magical things in life that we just accept. Economic systems, the law. Why do we accept legal fictions but are unwilling She's loving it. You can't see her, but she's scratching up the post. Why is it that we accept legal fictions but refuse to accept magic? I think that is a question imposed by this novel. I would put forth this idea, the idea of alienation from oneself, that capital destroys culture. Capital destroys religion as we go forward in the modern age, this postmodern age. We're seeing the destruction of culture, and I don't think that's, I'm not even going to try to argue it. I think that's true. Everywhere we go, everywhere capitalism touches, the culture that was is destroyed, and they all become more like the other, because culture does not make money. When we look at the culture today, when we look at fandom, when we look at music, everything must be monetized. Everything has a price, and if it's not monetized, it's not culture. So when the banana company comes to town and they invoke their violence, they slowly take over. There is an understanding that the town belongs to the natives, but slowly there becomes an understanding that no, it does not. There are many fictions in this novel, many legal fictions, many ships that pass and ideas that quarrel with each other. But the most notable to me is the legal fiction of personhood. There's a point in 100 Years of Solitude where there's a court case and a man is declared dead. He's alive, but legally they have his death certificate and he is considered dead. And by this nature, they're able to win against the Latin American people. The banana company is able to enforce its aims through this legal fiction. And it's just accepted right there alongside the flying carpets, the search for immortal life, ghosts, a plague that induces insomnia and slowly makes you forget. 100 Years of Solitude, then, is a look at nostalgia, a look at what we accept as real and unreal. And it is a look at family trauma. As we look back, the damage that we caused to each other. There are stories here that I can only say are incestuous, that are questionable, and yet the family goes on. And these immoral sort of stories are not questioned. They're accepted as anything else. And I think there's this trauma throughout the novel that the family causes to each other, which felt real. It felt Latin American to me. It felt like it felt like I was silently speaking the things that I've always known, but could not say. 100 Years of Solitude is a book that leaves a lasting impact on me. It takes a look at so many things. It takes a look at what it means to be Latin American. And it presented a world that I could understand. Despite it being full of magic, it felt familiar, like I had come home. And in that same way, I realized I had never been home to begin with. I left Central America when I was 6. I have nothing but nostalgia. I don't know that place, and I could never know it. Not like my mom, not like my dad. But I do know it better than my sisters ever will. But what does it even mean to know a place? It's all memories. It's all nostalgia. You can try to grasp it, but all you'll have is a memory within a memory. As you try to recall it, you'll only forget more, and you'll create new things that weren't there to begin with. And as you do so, you might realize that the place you thought was beautiful was always destined for destruction.